if you don't wake up at night thinking about it, it's probably a very bad sign.
Business is not always everything, right? And that's why you have co-founders you can rely on. And I think it's great that you managed to be there for her at that moment.
Preserving our relationship to me was the key thing because without that, there's no company, anyways. Right?
You're watching Next Big Wave, the podcast for founders by founders in Southeast Asia. In this episode, we're going to talk about founder journeys, growth strategies, and much more. Just to help me out, if you could like and subscribe, it would be awesome. And let's get into the episode.
All right, so welcome on today's episode of Next Big Wave. Today I'm joined by someone I've been following on LinkedIn for quite a while and have been trying to get on the podcast for a little while as well. Thibaut Briere is also a French founder like myself and currently based in Singapore, working on something really cool that I don't know much about, which is Eldercare.
Hi,
Thibaut, welcome to the
team.
podcast.
Welcome. Very glad to be here. Super excited. It's been a while as well. I've been waiting for that, so really excited.
Awesome. I'm super excited because for me, these types of podcasts are an opportunity to learn from other creators, other founders, and I'm especially interested in industries that I don't know much about, or in this case, anything about. So I think it's going to be an interesting episode for anyone who's curious about, non-traditional industries in the tech sector because eldercare is something that is talked about a lot given the baby boomer are reaching sort of retirement and there's going to be a ton of demand in
Yeah.
this sector, but to some it might not be as appealing because it's not necessarily a sexy industry, but I think you're going to prove them wrong today. Thibaut, do you want to kind of give us a background about yourself, kind of your history of work and how you ended up in Southeast Asia building this fabulous business, Glorious,
Yeah.
or Glorious business,
Yeah,
I should.
sure. So my name is Thibaut. I'm French. I've been a little more than 6 years in Singapore. I'm an engineer by training. That's why I started. My first job was in 1997, back in the Web 1 days, I guess, even though we didn't call it that. But so I've heard the sound of a modem when you connect to the internet. I've waited for the page, to load pixel after pixel. That's how I started. But when I saw that, for me it was like, oh my god, it's going to change everything versus what we had in terms of software at the time. So that's how I got started, and I did that for like 5 6 years. And um, early on, I was like, okay, the tech is super exciting, but what I'm excited about is the kinds of problems we can solve with it. Not so much building, new apps, etc. So I moved from engineering um, to marketing gradually to really start from the problems.
Okay.
And then I started as a as the first employee in startup, and then moved to corporate, went back to startup, was acquired by a corporate. So I've worked in startups, scale-ups, and corporates, um, and initially in engineering, then sort of open innovation roles for one of the corporates, and then to marketing. Um, and in Singapore, I've been doing first fractional marketing, so doing growth and marketing for early stage B2B startups, solo business. And I loved, like you said, going to multiple industries because I think, especially as a marketer, there's a lot of value trying to understand, okay, in that industry, what are some marketing strategies, GTM motions that have worked, and how can I take that and try to apply that to different industries? Yeah, so that's what I've done, and I've worked a lot in boring industries. Um, I can't really explain why, but I think it comes down to really spending a lot of time diving into the problems. And I think a lot of the boring industries are considered boring because a lot of people simply don't want to do that work, right? But that's where I love to be, away from the spotlight and just working with our agencies, being in the trenches with them. So yeah, super excited to be here.
Cool. And so I was looking at your LinkedIn and you have, kind of a long history of different roles. You've been a mentor in almost all the big accelerators in the region. So tell me about like what that involved, like why did you go towards the mentor direction, and how did you become a co-founder after that? Like, what
Um,
was the transition?
so I think the mentoring piece really, I've always had this kind of role, I guess, for many years. But when I started to act as a fractional marketeer in the region, um, I I didn't do this in order to work alone. That's the part that I didn't really like, right? I love the freedom, etc. But I always want to work with other people, and mentoring for me was a way to stay grounded in that environment and always be in touch with people, right? Um, every cohort of those accelerators, when I would go and mentor, that would allow me to be in touch with, let's say 10, 15, 20 startups at a time, and I would try and help them, right? So it was this type of asymmetry that I liked because it was very efficient to me to be exposed to new industries, new countries. Um, and I think there's a lot of I'm really like a 0 to 1 marketeer. If I had to summarize my profile, and I think it's a subject that's super misunderstood, completely misunderstood. And I've seen a lot of startups doing mistakes at that phase. So I was like, okay, maybe I can save these guys some headaches by giving them, ways and
Hmm.
frameworks and mental models to approach this whole 0 to 1 phase from a marketing perspective. And I just started, and then yeah, I got some great feedback, so I just kept going, and I love and I learned a lot as well. I learned a lot from them, from all those industries, um, and just meeting great people. So yeah.
So, did any of this experience sort of shape what you're doing now, which is this company called Glorious, or was that something that you had in the back of your mind already for
Um,
a while?
I I think I knew I would start a company at some point. I guess when I moved to Singapore, with my wife and the family, we just wanted to get out of our comfort zone, etc. That was the initial trigger, right? And being a fractional marketeer fit the bill as okay. It can't get any hardcore than that. I'm coming to a new country. I don't have any friends. I don't know anybody. I don't have a visa. I don't have a job. No one knows me. Hey, I'm going to be a solo business because there's no one I can complain to. If it doesn't work, it's on me. End of the story. So I love that aspect. Um, but so I love the stretch that it created for me. Um, but then as business grew, I realized that so the sales process was a lot easier, and I would have people reaching out, say, hey, I need help with XYZ, and we have these founders Slack, whatever, and then your name came up, so can you help? I was like, okay. And as much as I liked it, it means that in order to serve that demand, I needed to become great at consulting. The job was not to become, an even better marketeer. It was really crafting better proposal and like better splitting my time across clients. I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm an operator. I just want to do the work. And so that's when, to me, that was the
Hmm.
trigger. Okay, I need to go back at just building something. And I sort of, I guess I was fractional for almost 5 years. And I had like COVID and all that, shitstorm going on. So like, okay, I've done it. Now it's time to move on. And I felt like I had a much better understanding of the region, of the dynamics, a strong network. So it seemed like a good time for me to do it. And also, it's not so much the experience that I had, but I've seen the climate um, really change in the ecosystem with a recession, interest rates going up, etc. And VC money being scarce resource, etc. So I thought, okay, it's an even better time because at least cards are on the table. As in, VC money is challenging. Recession, maybe not. We're not sure, but whether it's people and companies, they were going to think twice before buying anything. but at least you know that's the frame in which
Hmm.
you're going to execute, right? There's no like crazy evaluation that goes down suddenly because you're not even sure why. Um, so I like this type of very hard environment at least, but you know the rules. They're much
Hmm.
clearer than like 4, 5 years ago, I would argue. So that's me.
Got it. And so tell me more about this company that you're building. I think, I've read a lot about it through your LinkedIn posts, but I'd love to hear it firsthand, kind of walk through the idea, the business model,
Yeah,
and what your
sure.
vision is with it.
If you're watching this and you're a B2B startup founder in Southeast Asia, struggling to grow your startup, we have a whole community of founders just like you. And on a weekly basis, we discuss strategies and growth hacks. We'd love to have you amongst us. Feel free to join at nextbigwave.co or find the link in the description. I'll see you there.
So if we try to break down the eldercare space, so providing the care for older people, right? That's the space we're in, and the problem is already massive. It's painful and it's growing and it's global, and there's not a lot of people of this nature, right? So that's a good space to be in from our perspective. But then if we look at the problems in that space, we see that basically no country has cracked the nut in terms of creating a system like creating the infrastructure to take care of those older people. And
Hmm.
we talked to a lot of like customer discovery 101. So I think we talked to 400 people in 12 countries. And the problem is, one, it's very long to recruit caregivers. It can take up to a year in Singapore, which you've heard from one of the organizations we've talked to. And then the churn, the turnover after a year can be super high. So even though in Asia we have less data, but in the US it's 77%, and we've heard between 60 to 80% overall. So it can take up to a year to recruit someone, and after a year, let's say 70% of them are gone. Crazy numbers. And when they're gone, it's not
Hmm.
that they move on to a competitor to earn a little more, because the fact of the matter is that 90% of those caregivers are migrants. So the churn means to just take a flight back home. End of story, right? Um,
Hmm.
and the reason for that is that basically the burnout rates are extremely high in that industry. So this is something we discovered very early on. So what do we do in an industry where you have a massive problem and growing, um, and the people who are supposed to take care of that are burning out at alarming rates? And when we started to look at how they do their job today, how they're supposed to do their job, I'm going to make it short, but it's largely pen and paper. So a typical example, you can have a caregiver um, works in a home care environment. So she's deploying various homes, and she's supposed to take care of those people. She can have 4 shifts in a day, 12 hours a day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And she goes to the office, picks up paper form, she gets the address, she goes there, she does the care, and then in between the shifts, so in the commute, in the metro, she's supposed to fill in those paper forms, writing in English in the MRT, which um, this person, if you realize that she might be a migrant coming from Myanmar, typically 25 years old, she doesn't, writing is not her strength. Writing in English, even less so.
Hmm.
And, writing in the MRT is not, it's a little bit cumbersome, right? What it means is that she basically doesn't do it until she comes up, she comes down she comes back home, and then she sits down and she probably takes about an hour and a half to fill in those 4 paper forms manually in English, and then the next day she picks up the form and hands them over at the office. So when you look at that, our proposition is very simple. How about we digitize that process, right? When you have a new
Hmm.
senior as a care organization, you need to onboard, quote unquote, the senior. So you have a series of assessments, and then you need to create a care plan. From this care plan, you create a task list every time someone needs to be deployed there. Um, you need to ensure that this task list is done, and then you need to make sure that you have any information that the caregiver sees while doing the task list, that you have this feedback loop so that you can improve the care plan. And so that's basically what we're doing, right? So we're a vertical B2B SaaS for elder care operations. So we sell to both residential care and home care agencies, basically helping with the care planning, delivery, and reporting. And the proposition is, of course, reduced errors because it's digitized, and basically huge time saving. Just the pure B2B SaaS proposition is time saving compared to paper, but then using AI, we're able to really bring crazy time savings, especially on the care reporting side, and we're able to translate as well from like Burmese, for instance, into English. So that reduces a huge cause of error as well, because you don't force a caregiver to first think in English and then write that down. She can speak in Burmese, and then we take that and add that to the care plan. So a simple proposition really of digital transformation, if you will, in the eldercare space.
Okay, and you've been working at it for a little over a year, if I'm not mistaken. What stage are you at right now with the business? Have you raised money? Have you built a prototype? Are you already in market?
Yeah, so
What's going on?
we did the Antler program. We started back in October 2023. We got the investment from Antler in December 2023. So we've been like 9 full months in operation. So the stage we're at the moment, we're really trying to deploy the first trials with care organizations. And our sales cycle, we're in a slow industry, right? The industry runs on pen and paper because they don't really understand so much technology, right? So the way to sell any form of technology, it has to be, there's a lot of hand holding to be done just to explain what technology overall can do. Not so much our product, but just even like cloud, these sort of things are, there's a varying degrees of understanding, right? So the way to sell is really to try and listen to their problems, map their key processes and how they do it today, their current workflows, and then come up with a few designs to help them, hey, we could do this, right? To try and help them understand what can be done with tech, and then building prototypes that they can use. And that's basically the way to sell, right? And then the last step, of course, is you have patient data and you have the staff data, staff profiles, etc., for the actual trial to happen. So that's the phase we're at the moment. So pretty exciting. And yeah, it's a long, as I said, boring industry, long cycle, but that's what we love. So
Yeah, and you have a co-founder. I don't want to butcher her name.
Jonas,
Junus or Yunus? Uh, did you guys know each other before the Antler program? I'm always curious about how co-founders, meet and become co-founders. I'm curious about
yeah.
your journey there.
So we had met before the program. And it's interesting because so she was doing like a venture builder program from SUSS, and I think I was doing a session on growth and marketing there, and we had a conversation about that space because she's coming from a VC background, but she's a trained gerontologist, so she has this very unusual background of like VC and gerontology, very passionate about the space, and we had a conversation about that probably like 2.5 years ago, and when and after doing this fractional work, I wanted to go back to building. I tried to find a co-founder, couldn't really find anyone. I'm not sure how you network to find a co-founder, to be honest. If you have any tricks, that'd be welcome. But I joined Antler and say, okay, I'm gonna give it a shot. And when I joined the first day, she was there. I'm like, okay, interesting. And very early on, we had these conversations about the space, and she was very clear. I'm going to do like something in eldercare. It's still like a broad space, so there's multiple ways you can go about it. and I had, healthcare was one of the area that I wanted to build in as part of Antler. So I was like, okay, that fits the bill. So very early on, we connected over that problems, and long nights at Antler talking about life and in general, not just tech, etc. And I think our vision
Hmm.
very much aligned, and not just the vision in terms of what we would like to achieve, but the way we want to build a company, the way we want to run a business, the way we approach, um, um, sales, etc. Everything clicked. So yeah, here we are, and we've been, yeah, I mean, we've
Love it.
been very uh, lucky, I think. To there's no drama. We just do the work. Um, since day one, we're just very focused. We talk to everybody we can in the space, listen, try to solve a problem. So uh, yeah, that's pretty. I'm very grateful to have found her again and reconnected over at and
That's good. Yeah, and we'll talk about LinkedIn in a minute, but I noticed on LinkedIn you guys have a very dynamic sort of relationship, which makes it engaging in every post. There's like back and forth and things like that. So I can tell there's definitely some complicity with you guys as co-founders, and in many companies that I analyze or founders I talk to, I don't necessarily see that complicity, and that's kind of refreshing to see. And I think it's part of having a good co-founder when you can sort of bounce on each other's thoughts and also complement each other. So yeah, I always found your co-founder relationship to be quite inspiring.
thanks.
But speaking of LinkedIn, so you're a go-to-market guy and you're a LinkedIn top voice, so you obviously know the value of sort of building the founder's brand as sort of like the main go-to strategy for B2B in 2024. On that note, do you think LinkedIn is the go-to? Because I know you spend a lot of time on it, but you've been doing go-to-market for a long, long time. So I'm curious to know your thoughts specifically for your business, but more broadly as well. What is the best way to go about your go-to-market for
Oh
B2B these
man.
days?
So I think it really depends on the specific industry, right? Um, I mean, marketing 101, you need to be where your audience is, right? Um, and which is, if your audience doesn't use LinkedIn, you should question the time you should spend on LinkedIn, and you should be clear about the reasons why. Um, I think overall, LinkedIn is one of those platforms that has managed to, like, one of those social networks that has managed to stay relatively, like, to stay away from all of the bullshit that you can find on social networks, etc. So it does a
Hmm.
decent job. Of course, there's things that we all wish that were not there, but overall, it's still, if you come up as very genuine and transparent and as a social creature as every human is, I believe, it can be a great way to connect with people, right? Um, so overall, I think there's a lot of value in using LinkedIn if you do it right, and the wrong way. I'm pretty sure you know that, but the wrong way being you just connect with a bunch of people and then you send those automated messages, completely irrelevant. That's not how you should be
Hmm.
doing.
Hmm.
So using LinkedIn as a way to connect genuinely with people with a specific interest in mind is, I think, great. And then the second piece is writing. If you get into the habit of writing, I think it's a great platform. I completely suck at Instagram. I mean, I don't use it for marketing purposes, but I just don't know how it works, right? Writing, I like that, and LinkedIn
Right.
helps me do that in order to clarify my thought, um, and sometimes express some point of view that I believe might be either really half formed on my end, or I know they're a bit of a contrarian point of views. I put it out there just to
Hmm.
see how people react in order to refine my point of view. So I think when you do it that way, there's a lot of values. And um, the last part being in elder care, how effective is LinkedIn? So of course our agencies are not
Hmm.
so much on LinkedIn. Some of them are. Um, so we've had some successes with LinkedIn there from a business perspective. Um, I think it's a good for those few people in our audience who are there. It's a great platform because you can build the trust. Because I think there are quite a few startups joining our space, and then they drop the ball at some point because it's a tough industry, right? And I think
Hmm.
our audience, they want to see our stamina. They want to see, okay, are these guys going to still be around in 6 months, in 12 months, etc., right? I think LinkedIn is a very simple
Hmm.
way to do that for those people of our audience who are on LinkedIn. They see what we're posting, we connect with them, we had chats regularly, but they see that week after week we're still doing it, still doing the work, so it brings credibility and it brings trust. So that part is pretty interesting, and it's also a way for us to refine our story and sort of embark the prospect with us in this story. So I think it can be a great tool, even though it is an algorithm. So you need to understand how it works. You need to understand that and accept the fact that you're playing the game of the algorithms. You're playing a game where you don't make the rules,
Hmm.
but
But you've clearly kind of cracked the algorithm. You've become a LinkedIn top voice. I'm sure you're seeing some benefits out of it. Um, how exactly did you get about to do that, and has it actually brought benefits to you? Because I know, you know, part of what I do is help people get better at LinkedIn, founders in the B2B space. And I always get the questions like, should I get like the top voice? Should I get those other badges? Are they worth it? You've got what's considered the highest ranking of LinkedIn creators. Has it been beneficial to you? And yeah, how
um,
did you get there?
so I'm not sure how you get the badge, to be honest. And and I talked to a few people at LinkedIn. So when I got this badge, I literally found out, right? There was probably an email from LinkedIn that went to my spam straight away. So I just literally, I think I had a WhatsApp message of some friends saying, "Hey, congrats!" Like, yeah, for what? For the badge? Like, what badge? What are you talking about? And this is how I found out, literally.
Hmm.
So I don't know if there's a formal process. I guess I'm sure part of it is data driven. I think for me, I try to stay on point on what I talk about. So I don't want to go in many different directions. Um, I I'm transparent. I think that it's just who I am. So I'm transparent on LinkedIn as well. And I try to provide value, right? Because I find value from people sharing what they know on LinkedIn. Uh, so I guess it's a combination of those factors. There's certainly the consistency. I guess it will be hard to get the badge if you're after that. If you post once a month, right? Or if you post for 2 months every day, and then you stop for 3 months, right? So there's certainly that component. Um, Now, in terms of the benefits, I think I'm not sure. You have this influx of connections, I guess, but to be honest, there's both good and bad connections. I think you have there's a whole
Hmm.
wave of people who are targeting the top voices, right? And they try to sell you something, or they try
Right.
to sort of piggyback on the top voice to become a top voice themselves. So these type of
Mm.
connections are not, it's just a waste of time. But yeah, I think
It hasn't boosted your content or
um,
anything like that.
I'm not sure, to be honest. Um, but I think it's also
Mm.
uh, there's one big component which is starting in elder care. It's a different sphere as well. So all of the LinkedIn network that I had, the pure startup people, the founders, the marketeers, etc. So they see what I'm doing and they like it, but then I talk about a lot of stuff that are not relevant to them, right? So when I talk about elder care,
Hmm.
it's not relevant for some of those people. So I guess I'm
Right.
talking less about marketing and more about elder care. So I guess it's hard to do an average, right? Um, so I don't know. I think
Hmm.
it's an encouraging badge to have. You're like, okay, I'm not sure who gave me that badge. I'm not sure why,
Hmm.
but yeah, you know it takes time, so it's a good recognition.
So it's not the holy grail, let's say. It's just a
Yeah,
nice to have at
for
this
me,
point.
I was not trying to get it, you know. So,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah,
I think it's
fair
always a
enough.
good thing to have. There couldn't be only good things, I guess. Just the trust when I try to connect with someone. If they see the badge, the blue badge, I guess
Hmm.
it's okay. It can't be a
It's a lot
scam,
easier,
those
yeah.
kind of things. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good point, the trust factor. Yeah, okay, that's cool. And just another thing about LinkedIn is I've noticed that, writing content for founders has attracted a lot of investors, people curious. They're kind of like the collateral of your content. Have you had the same effect where, you're trying to get your ICP's attention, but then you're getting like kind of a collateral attention? And in a founder's case, it's a great collateral attention to have from investors because they sort of same way your ICPs learn to trust you, investors learn to see that you're serious, you're dedicated, you know what you're talking about, you have traction or not, and that might be a signal for them to invest. So have you experienced that, and is that something that you're
yeah, I think
pursuing?
we've for us using LinkedIn is we both realized, I guess, that we have strong networks, and that's a good thing, right? Um, Beyond attracting our ICP on LinkedIn, which is a very small portion of them are on LinkedIn, we realized very early on two
Hmm.
things. One, like you said, investors. It's an easy way for investors to be up to speed in terms of what you're doing and get those updates, right? And so if we have, and we're not fundraising right
Hmm.
now, so we're not, reaching out to investors, but regularly we have those investors
Hmm.
reaching out because they want, understand what we're doing, they want to chat. So we've seen that movement clearly, and it's like you said, it's good, and not just like from an investment perspective, but also well, yeah, I get the story. I want to understand the story more. So it's not just wave your hand and you will get noticed, right? It's more, it's getting into the
Hmm.
nuances of what you say. What is your story? What's the origin story, right, of what you're building? So that part is good. And then the second part that I didn't expect is that we are in a space that a lot of people can relate to. So there's a lot of people that I had that I've met them in the past. I've worked with them in the past, like startup people, like working relationship. And um, when I started to post about what we're doing with Glorius, they reached out again and say, "Hey, I love the space because I had to take care of my grandma, whatever. My dad has that.
Hmm.
I'm a caregiver. My granddad passed 2 weeks ago." All of these, and we had a lot of people reaching out, say, "I'd love to help. If you want intros, happy to help. If you want this or that, happy to help." And even though it's not like an acquisition channel, if you say, but of course, I answer very often is any intros you have in the space to whether it's a home care agency or residential care, it's always welcome, right?
Hmm.
So as a side effect of posting on LinkedIn, we understand that the problem is something that a lot of people can relate to, and they want what we're building to happen. And as a result of that, we got
Okay.
quite a few warm intros to those care providers, which is a good thing as well.
So they're sort of following the journey along and trying to
Yeah.
participate and help. I think that's really great. And given that, you're targeting a more traditional industry that is not necessarily on LinkedIn that much, what's your actual go-to strategy then? Like how are you planning to acquire these customers? I know you're still kind of in early stages of developing your prototype and sort of trying to get some early traction, but how do you see scaling
Yeah.
your
So
project?
right now we're in a GTM that's very founders led. Founders, let's say, hardcore, doing the work, so reaching out to organizations and building the trust and convincing them. That's the key motion. So pure outbound. Um, Trying to focus on those intros I just mentioned. Um, and then the second part is the content, right? So there's what we post on LinkedIn, which participates to that. And typically, when we connect with someone on when we reach out to someone on LinkedIn, the content that we post helps, having more connection accepted, etc., and helps start the conversation. Um, then we have this podcast, which where we basically just like you're doing, right? We reach out to people, we interview them, um, and we dive into how do they provide the care today, what are the challenges to do that, do they use tech or not, and so this thing as well helps have conversations. uh, they help express our point of view, and they help create this sort of community. It's a small world, right, in our space. So this
Hmm.
I mean, we call it a podcast. It happens on a call, but we don't publish the videos for now. So it's really the transcript, right? So creating content with that, it's a good way to reach out to more people and create content for the industry, which is something that's missing today. And then the last bit is
Hmm.
really the community part. Um, it's something that we don't have too much time to work on, so we have those quarterly meetups, very grassroots. Hey, we're going to talk about old
Hmm.
people, if you will, and that's uh, it's black and white enough to attract the right kind of audience, and we really try to connect everybody. So whether they're care managers or caregivers or residential home care, um, um, informal caregivers like the members of the family and professional ones. We try to really
Hmm.
bring everybody down together. So this community, we can't spend as much time as I would like to do that. But I mean, we're a startup, so it has to make business sense. Um, but yeah, that's basically how we do it, right? Sales, LinkedIn, content, and community.
Okay. I love it. Love it. And something I'm wondering about is, you've been a mentor for so long and you've kind of seen the founders evolving, but kind of from a third party standpoint. Has become like when you became a founder, has it been what you expected it to be, or have you kind of been shocked by certain aspects of the founder
Um,
lifestyle?
I think most of it I was well aware of what I was getting myself into, um, because I've always as a fractional I was working only with early stage startups, and early stage as in like very early stage. So I I know how it works and the cycles and the dynamics. But I think the two things that I feel in my bones every day, every night is really um, you go to bed with that in mind, and you wake up with that in mind. It never leaves you, right? And very often I just like my
Hmm.
brain wakes me up at night because it can be 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and sleeping. My brain is still working on those things, and that wakes me up, because I love it so much that I just wake up and start in front of a laptop at 3 a.m. start working because I have this idea and I know I can't go back to sleep because I need to put it out there. So that mental load,
Hmm.
which I love, is I think the biggest um, discovery, which of course makes sense. And not, now that I say it, it's like, yeah, of course. What did you expect, right? But it really never leaves me, and same for Jonas. So that part is certainly something that I didn't foresee. Um, but I think that's um, it's a strength, and back to the founding process, I guess if you don't have that, you will never have the stamina to go through and to push through when things
Hmm.
get hard and like things don't work and you're like preaching in a desert and nobody's listening, nobody cares, whatever it is, right? When things get tough, if you don't have that, uh, if you don't really care, um, if you don't wake up at night thinking about it, it's probably a very bad sign, right? So, but to me, that's the biggest thing. Yeah,
Now, if you're trying to live kind of the corporate life of switching your brain off at night, you're probably
it doesn't
not meant
work.
to be a
It doesn't
founder.
work. Yeah, 100%.
It doesn't work. So I want to ask you a question, but the premise of this question is, we've been postponing these calls a little bit. And the last time I believe you mentioned you were dealing with a crisis or something very important. And we don't have to get into what specifically happened, but my question is, in this young founder journey that you've had, have you already had some horror stories, things that just went crazy? And can you elaborate
Oh,
on those?
okay. Yeah. So short answer is yes. There's one specifically I have in mind, but I can't say much there. But yeah, it's yes, that everybody has oral stories, I guess, when you're founding a company. But I think the thing you mentioned is so Jonas had a personal tragedy, losing her father, and I don't want to speak for her.
Hmm.
It's very personal, but
For
I
sure.
think how I have lived through that, you have this culture, conversational values, whatever, as a startup, and everybody's looking at the HubSpot and the Netflix, code of culture or whatever, those 200 pages document, very
Hmm.
inspiring. And and I was like, okay, what you should be doing is obvious. You need to be with your dad, and we'll do what we can, right? But it's very simple, very easy, right? But I think when I reflect back on how we've dealt with that phase, um, it 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 is about what kind of business we want to be, right? And it could have turned in so many different avenues, right? But I just knew, yeah, it's just I was trying to be as supportive as I could during this time, and yeah, it was very hard, but the way we've managed that and preserving our relationship to me was the key thing, because without that, there's no company, anyways, right? Um, so
Hmm.
we could have talked about money, equity, whatever, blah blah blah. I was like, we're doing this
Mm.
together. If we're not doing it together, I'm not going to do it, because in a way we were so early that it's not like we had to fire 50 people, if whatever, if she had to quit and these kind of
Hmm.
things. But yeah, we did it, and the way we came out of that is just it defines a lot in terms of how we approach the business, um, and how, yeah, how do you manage a business from a runway perspective, from a sales activity perspective, etc. In those type of environment, um, it is challenging, but uh, for us, um, I'm pretty happy with how we're coming out of that phase, like stronger, and very aligned on how we want to run things, I guess. So I can't say, I can't say much. It's not
Hmm.
for me to talk about it, but
No, I mean, like, look, thank you for sharing already, because yeah, like, life throws stuff at you, and as a founder, you have to decide how you're
yeah,
going to handle it, what to prioritize, and business is not always everything, right? And that's why you have co-founders you can rely on, and I think it's great that you managed to be there for her at that moment. And I think that's kind of like the foundation of a great business where people actually care about each other, and it's not just about the money in the business, because that will translate to your clients understanding you as people and being able to relate with you as well. So I think that's a great way to look at it. And like you said, you're so early that it's not like you're optimizing for profitability and things like that. You're right now building
Yeah.
a sort of foundation. So great stuff. And kind of to conclude, I like to ask the guests about different sort of life hacks or things they use in their day-to-day to optimize their work or to be more efficient. Do you have anything that you've sort of been actively using or leveraging?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I have. I try to. So I wake up at 5 every morning, and I have I have kids, right? And my daughter is 8. So as soon as she wakes up, it's like she wants to be with us, and she needs this and that. So it's a way for me to. I know that I have 2 hours and a half of it's quiet, it's dark. I can think through what I have to do, etc. So not that it's a hack, but it's just how I do it. I try to fast as
Hmm.
well, so I usually take one meal a day. I'm not strict about it at all, but I love eating, etc. And I love bonding over food with people, but um, just to keep the energy level more stable and not have the the peak and then the drop,
Spikes. Mm.
and it saves some time. So, like simply if I don't eat, it saves a bit of time, saves energy, um, and then um, I try to have those systems, quote unquote, in place where like creating content for LinkedIn, for instance, this kind of thing, right? Where I had those habits, I know how to do it, to try and just optimize what I do. Uh, but man, I don't know. I
Hmm.
mean, um, it's,
I mean, that's already a good hack, being able to wake up at 5 to get that extra time. I think, there's literally a club called the 5 a.m. club of people who do that and use it as a tool to be more productive. So my only question about that is how early do you have to go to bed to be able to
I'm
manage
not a
that?
big sleeper, but yeah, usually around 11.
Okay.
So it's like six, six, seven.
Okay, so really minimal sleep,
Yeah, not
not
too
not
much.
too
I
much.
can I
Yeah.
can go a bit hardcore if I have to, and like have like 4, 5 hours sleep for like 2 weeks. But I try to avoid that. 'Cause otherwise,
Hmm.
I know I'm gonna wake up with a massive headache
That's impressive.
if I
Yeah.
do that. But I think it's yeah. That's an interesting question. Not that it's a hack, but it's probably the second biggest thing as a founder is just the two of us right now because we want to go hardcore, as in we do the maximum we can do ourselves, right? And there's logic to that is because we can't hire anybody else if we haven't done the job ourselves, whether it's a developer, whether it's sales, whether it's
Yeah.
anything. Um, but that means we have 48 hours every day, the two of us, right? If I wake up one morning and I feel like shit and I have like a headache, whatever, or I'm down because I didn't have enough sleep,
Hmm.
and I just like crawl my way through the day, I know essentially I've lost maybe like 10 hours of my time, for instance. It's 10 hours of the business that have been wasted.
Hmm.
So learning to prioritize not my health, as in there's nothing crazy here, but hey, I just need to sleep because okay, I need to sleep now, and I'm going to go to bed at 8, but I know it's just because tomorrow I'm going to have this 15 hours day. um, so
Hmm.
I think that's how I see things, and making sure that I can operate, and my brain can function is really it's really important to me. And I'm learning Korean, so my morning is literally I start with Korean, a bit of meditate.
Why are you learning Korean?
Family reasons, like there's um, distant relatives. I mean, my wife has a Korean mom, but
Okay. And my wife is Korean, so I'm also
yeah,
learning
the
Korean.
best. Uh, it has no place on this podcast.
Yeah.
I let you edit that if you want, but yeah. So there's Korean. There's I have this app to play games like to fight dementia, which is a lot about cognitive games. So something very
Mm.
simple. Then a bit of working out and then meditation. I do that, and that's a way to for me to stay sane and wake up the mind and the body before then sitting down and writing. So you
Mm,
know everything about me.
beautiful, beautiful. And kind of to cap it off, do you have a shout out you'd like to make to anyone or any organization in particular?
Um, Shout out! Oh my God! I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's just nothing in particular, but yeah. I mean, to everybody who reach out and try to help, and all the organizations we're working with. I think it's really cool to be. Um, I feel like we are as an industry, this problem is going to be massive and it's going to be omnipresent in the coming years and decades.
Hmm.
And we're really at the beginning, right? And I think a lot of people realize that in that industry, whether they're staff and administrators, etc. So it's a pretty exciting phase to be in that industry at that moment, and everybody uh, wants to try and do a good job, and that part is that's the kind of community, I would say. Not that we're all friends, etc., but everybody working in that space. It's far from the spotlight. It's far from anything that is talked about. It's far from anything a lot of people want to hear. Like aging and becoming old.
Hmm.
Um, but the people who are working
For sure.
in that space, it's very super exciting. I had just had a conversation with another founder in the space this morning. I was like, yeah, super energizing. So anybody who's in that space, um, they deserve, yeah,
Shout out
they
to you.
deserve more attention. So yeah,
Love it. Thank you, Thibaut. That's the pod. And I really appreciate all the insights. It was a great conversation. I learned a lot for sure. And I hope
yeah,
you enjoyed
very
yourself
much
as
so.
well.
Thanks so much, man.